Alright, hi guys. Today this video I'm gonna actually talk about man management versus tactics. Number one, what is my own definition of man management and what's my own definition of tactics? After how I go about carrying out my man management and tactics with my teams and my players. More importantly, which one do I feel is more important in my youth coaching itself. So whether you are a beginner coach, whether you have been coaching for years, it's something I just want to share. There's no right, no wrong, so let's get straight into it. Now, so we get down to the first thing. What is exactly man management? If you see in other professional sports, you do hear this term man management. Some managers or coaches, they will say they are very fantastic in man management, whereas on the others, they might say, it's just getting down into the results, into the hardcore stuff. Man management, in my point of view, it's in simple terms, how I handle the players on and off the court. Happens most of the time outside of the court. Okay, so this takes, in my opinion, a lot of effort in order to understand the player or players as a whole. This understanding does take effort because it takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of the hearing and understanding, and also to a certain extent at times you need to think in the point of view of your players itself. With that, there's a lot of interactions and bonding that's needed to happen in the first place before this term man manage comes in. So some coach might come in and straight away exert the influence or authority and say that this is my way or the highway. To a certain extent, I do set out a certain set of rules and do's and don'ts, but in other aspects of the coaching, this man management takes a bit of sensitive handling, whether is it to a particular players or to a group of players, and that also brings on to the next part in terms of man management, which is the timing. Now, because a coach needs to exert his influence. So as mentioned, whether is it you want to send it out at the start or you build it up through a period of time. The timing and as well as your tone, how you deliver your tone and message has to be more or less pinpoint right to the dot. If not, any words that come out or any actions that you do or any decisions that you do might to a certain extent affect the morale and motivation of a player or the team. The last part of this definition of man management, right, is actually in regards to expectations and the goal setting. Why do I say so? Because looking at different players, you're having different players, everyone is different. If the expectations and goal setting for each and every of the player, it's the same. Most of the time what happens is pretty unrealistic because every player is different. So to a certain extent, this man management comes in where you need to at times just cater to what your player capabilities or level of expertise is at that moment of time. Into what is exactly tactics. Now, tactics in general, people will talk about formations, right? People will talk about formations, people will talk about a coaching plan, philosophy, beliefs, or what the coach actually wants to bring out in the team during the game itself. So usually tactics, you go in, like I mentioned, formation. At times, coaches will talk tactics in terms of the defensive plan and offensive plan. Now, defensive plan can also further break down into, for example, I play invasion sports in floorball. So the defensive plan could be, do you want to go for high pressing situation or do you want to keep your defensive compact? So these are the plans or strategy that a coach like me would have to think about, decipher, and then what next is to push it out through the trainings, and after that hopefully it pays off during the game by itself. Of course, other than defensive, you also want to talk about offensive side. It's the same point, but generally speaking, usually offensive, certain coaches will go as per the two general directions. One, which is a fixed play ups, which means that the players have to follow a strict fixed routine or play ups in order to attack. the opponents. Whereas on the other hand, certain coaches would say, okay, you have a lot, he gives a lot of freedom for the players to express themselves. So these are usually the tactics. And when does this whether is it man management or tactics is being deployed or being executed? Man management is a lot off court, as I mentioned previously, a lot off court, a lot of one-on-one individual talking, and perhaps if in terms of team setting is during the briefings, whether is it during the pre-training briefings, pre-game briefing, or even the post-game briefing as well. So it takes a lot of sensitivity. When I talk about man management, there's a lot of words being used by the coach. There's a lot of hearing and listening being used by the coach as well. Now, for tactics, on the other hand, I would like to say that it's usually done during trainings, because it has to be prepared, it has to be planned during trainings in order for it to be executed as smoothly as possible during the game, in terms of how I do my man management, and as well as my general tactical plans that I usually do for my youth teams. Okay, man management wise, very firstly, I usually would seek to understand. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, on the individual front, I will always work towards trying to understand what this player or this group of players are. Some players are very shy, some players are very, very loud. Some players have a mixture of occasionally they are shy, and then at certain occasions they are actually very active. So it takes, in my point of view, it takes time for me to go and understand the players I have on my hands, because at the end of the day, I'm doing youth coaching. So there are some constraints in terms of what kind of players I do get in the first place. And so yeah, I take my time to understand. There's a lot of 1v1 or one-on-one talking, whether is it during trainings, before trainings, or even after trainings, where I mentioned about the time that's taken to take the effort to go and understand the players. In my opinion, when my player feels that I can better understand him or her, to a certain extent with that bond, it allows me to translate it into the court instructions as well. So that's my point of view. And sometimes man management, right, in simple situations, it could be just remembering simple facts of your players. Now, what do I mean by that? Number one, names of my players. I usually seek to remember them within, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks. Whenever I get a new batch or fresh batch of players, that is my first objective that I usually take, the names, and gradually over time I will try to get to know them, whether is it how many siblings they have in the home, how they're doing their schoolwork, or simply their likes and dislikes. They are actually non-floorball related. So these are the small things that I do to like I said, close up the distance between a coach and a player. And it does not mean that I'm not strict whenever I need to. Okay, it's just an extra effort that I put in order to understand my players. As a team, in terms of man management, what I do is I set up a certain expectations in terms of their individual role in the team setting. So what do I mean by that? It means that players, as much as possible, I'll try to give them as clear and concise roles or instructions in terms of how do they actually fit into a specific line, or how do they fit into the team. Certain players who are a bit more bubbly and loud, I'll actually tell them that one of their extra roles is to be able to be extra motivating to the girls around them. I also increase, or I don't say increase, but I also welcome conflicts. Now, so this is another thing that I usually try to grasp in terms of opportunity. Wherever there's certain conflicts, right, I welcome it. And then of course I have to come in as a middleman, or I come in order to resolve the conflicts, and the most important thing is, after the conflict management, it enables the team to move forward and become stronger in terms of the team spirit. Lastly, or rather the last 2 points, in terms of man management, I'm usually very open to suggestions from my players, be it changes to the drills or ideas to make it a bit more fun. That will also have an extra sort of buy-in into the fact that they feel that they are part of the team. So opening to suggestions, also there's a need of balance, because there are certain do's or don'ts or rules and regulations that has to be followed. If it has to be followed, of course I'll make sure they have to follow the rules and regulations. If not, I'm pretty open to suggestions. Other than that, I will always create scenarios, certain scenarios in the practice or drills, in order to increase the competitiveness within the team, or through the modifications of the drills, in order to create that open conflicts, so that the team spirit can thereafter become better. In regards to tactics wise, honestly speaking, I'm a bit more defensive minded than offensive minded. Therefore, usually I prefer my defensive shape to be much more compact. Therefore, the defensive minded approach. And thereafter, with the compact defense, I'll usually work in terms of the counter-attacking situations. Now, what I'm trying to say right here, right, is already explaining through the plan or the process thoughts, or the thought process behind how I set up my tactics. So with the kind of players I have, I determine that I need it to be more defensive minded, or the approach has to be more defensive, and therefore my formations, my shape of my defense has to be compact, has to be structured, has to be organized, and therefore in my attack I need to place more emphasis on the counter-attacking situations. With that, in addition, I usually spend quite a bit of time to teach and explain and possibly work out dead ball situations, especially like free hits, where the players need to come out certain scenarios, or understanding that during the game they are able to work out certain dead ball situations like free hit, in order to increase the chance of scoring. So with that in mind, that you have the grand plan, right? Or rather, in the first place, you have these kind of players. With the defensive approach, I will further break down into how then I can structure my trainings so that I can fit into this objective. So for example, as mentioned, dead ball situations, I will spend possibly 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a practice where players will need to get together and create certain scenarios, certain options for them to explore these dead ball situations. What I usually do is I'll give them a fixed guidelines for them to follow. They will go and explore. That's where I'm allowing this open of ideas from the players. Thereafter, they will try to execute. I will pinpoint any mistakes, any room for improvements, and they go about doing it again, correct it, doing it again, correct it, doing it again. So this will go through a few rounds, or possibly a few sessions, before they can come out a certain routine or certain rules of thumb that within the line, for example, itself, they are able to understand each other and being able to execute during the game day. And that is just one example where, because of my overall plan, and therefore I break it down that way, and because of my emphasis on how I manage my players, and then that's how I structure a particular drill that way. Okay. Now, after talking so much, right, man management is one thing, tactical is one thing, but however, we as coaches often have limitations in terms of how much time we have in a training session. My answer to which is more important in my point of view. Now, in the past few years, I realized that I'm actually focusing a lot more on the man management rather than the tactical side of it. When I say so, I mean that because of how or what kind of players I have, and therefore I need to management to a certain way, and because I need to manage them a certain way, I structure the drills or the plan or the coaching plan or tactics because of that. So there's also another belief that if I can manage my players well, whether is it through getting them to improve the team spirit, getting them to even improve on the relationship between me and them, it has a better buy-in. I think I mentioned it just earlier in the video. There's a better buy-in of whatever plan I have onto them, and therefore they will be able to execute it a lot more better. And of course, I mentioned with the better team spirit, hopefully they can increase the extra effort on the court, be it even just 1 more percent. And lastly, with better man management and with the better buy-in, I would tend to say that then the execution of the tactics, it becomes a lot more easier. Of course, if I flip it the other way around, if I were to focus a lot on the tactics and I sort of ignore managing my players, what happens is I will find struggles in between the trainings, and I might having a lot of question marks, like why a certain player is not doing this, why a certain player is not following instructions, why a group of players is not able to execute whatever that was trained in the training and apply it onto the game. If you do hear this often, whether is it from yourself or from your fellow peers, that might be one of the case. But for me, it is the case because I did that in my earlier years of coaching, and I find myself struggling a lot, and I was honestly speaking very confused. So when I managed to I guess it's through experience, after years of experience, I managed to understand myself more, and I restructure my coachings, and I set the plans around it. And therefore with this flow, to me it makes a lot more sense. So I hope this is useful. If you have any other comments or debates or discussion or your own viewpoints, please do drop it in the comments below. If not, this is the first video that I'm talking as a coach to possibly another coach that's viewing this video. So if you like it, I'll possibly do more videos in terms of how I do my coaching. If not, peace out.